Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us here today for our NiCE Active 365 Monitor for our Microsoft Azure webinar. We have a good set of new announcements here today with a new product which is available as of today in the market on the Azure Marketplace. So I'm very excited, and I'm here together with my colleague, Siegfried Propieta, and we'll do have some slides. We have some live presentation, and expect that you will learn a lot around Azure as well, Azure Monitor. So we keep it quite technical in some areas. So if you have questions, please actually do start using the Q&A section or the chat, and we'll try to answer your questions at the end or as we go along. So a few words about NiCE. So we are focused on delivering application monitoring solutions primarily for Microsoft System Center, but also with this now for Microsoft Azure. We have a third product in there, which is for Micro Focus Operations Bridge. Around 17 application monitoring solutions we have at this point, but more are coming. We've been established in 1991, and today we spread across the whole globe. So we have in many different countries customers that use our products and sold over 3,500 licenses in the last 5 years. Just to give you an overview what we've been doing in the last years, we've been focusing on primarily management packs. So these are all the blue boxes you see. These are our management packs for VMware, SAP, Microsoft 365, and so on. There's a new add-on, which is MongoDB. It's been released, so you might have heard about that. And the other new one, which we are announcing today, is the Azure Monitor for Microsoft 365. So this is primarily built on the management packs we do, but it has an entirely new integration into Azure Monitor. You obviously need to have an Azure subscription for this. This is a prerequisite because it is not any longer around System Center Operations Manager or anything on-premise. All the data is stored in Azure in Log Analytics data stores or metrics data stores. And to deploy the solution, you would start on the Azure Marketplace, and we'll actually have a demo later up. But if you are willing and you have access to a subscription, please feel free to log on to the marketplace and search for NiCE Active 365 Monitor, and you'll find the solution which is live as of today. There's a roadmap, and I put this typically in the end, but actually I decided for today to start with it. We had a preview, a private preview on the Azure Marketplace, which was successfully done for over the last months. And that was the last webinar we did around that. So we announced the preview. So we had the preview ready, but you had to register basically with your ID to get subscribed to it. Now, what we've done in the last month, and many of the teams really worked like day and night on this to get this on track. We've done a marketplace public offer, and the deployment is much easier now, because before it had to be a lot of manual steps to do that. And we have a set of documentation that will help you to guide you through the process as well. And today we have the GA announcement here with the general availability on the marketplace. And we'll actually show how this is deployed. Going forward, actually, we have a bit of an outlook here at the beginning already of the session. So we plan to add more monitoring, so especially around SharePoint site monitoring. We do actually plan to have active AAD Connect monitoring for Azure Active Directory Connect for all that are using ADFS in their organization. Essential configuration, you will find out that currently the configuration of the tenants that you monitor for Microsoft 365 is quite complicated, especially if you distribute that. So that will be improved. That's on the roadmap, and eventually some other things that are out in the future here. So the next slides, so look forward to that. So this is addressing all our existing customers. So, and we decided to put really last minute, like very last minute, together this offer. So there's an option for our existing Active 365 Management Pack customers who either like to transition to this, or as well use in parallel to the Management Pack the Azure Auth to integrate in Azure. So there's no cost at this point for the customers that are using the Management Pack. So if you're interested into that, please just drop us a line at solutions@nice.de. So let's get a bit to the meat of the solution. Like, what does it actually do? So we started from the point that, especially now in these times where we are working remote in home office locations, the need of a working communication system like Microsoft Teams, Skype, or also SharePoint for file sharing, other collaboration tools, emails as well. All the services that are part of Microsoft 365 are critical. If this doesn't work today, if we have a Teams outage in many enterprises, this is a disaster. Meetings won't be happen. There will be delayed in projects. It will affect the whole deliverables of the organization severely. So the end user experience monitoring, as this has been branded or given this name, is really critical, so that everybody at their home has the correct experience, a positive experience of using the Microsoft 365 services. And there have been a couple of examples in recent time where there have been problems, especially around Teams. Like 2 weeks ago, for example, it was not possible in Teams to control somebody else's screen. And everybody tried and wondered why that was not possible. And eventually they opened a ticket at their support desk and say, it just doesn't work. And well, as this is a service, the admin cannot do much. And if they're clever, they go up to the health status portal on the status.office.com and retrieve the services status from there, and they will see that actually was a critical note that Teams is affected or Teams is degraded in that point in time. Obviously, it would be much easier to have this as a note sent that there's a problem with it from a user perspective, and this is exactly what this product does. We monitor not only the different services, but we monitor the entire tenant here. We monitor the directories, OneDrive, and the Office platform. And we all integrate this into the Azure Log Analytics store. So there's nothing like in the area of SCOM where you have to build up like a monitoring system. It is basically all there if you have a subscription. And most of us who are using Microsoft 365 do as well have a subscription where they can place in resources in resource groups that then allow to store also data in there. And this is basically the sweet point, if you like, that when you require monitoring for your Microsoft 365 service, it does not require to build up a separate monitoring system. It's basically there what you already have. So we do, and this is while the active monitoring comes now into play. So the product is called Active 365 Monitoring because the focus is here on the active probing of functionality. So this means we do not just go out and retrieve a status. We actually test if an email can be sent, if a file can be uploaded to SharePoint, or if a team chat can be established, if two bots, if you like, can chat to each other and give that information. We also can do that at different locations. That means it does not necessarily run this probe from one location, like from your data center, for example, but you could deploy the monitoring to different breakout locations, for example, like branch offices in a bank or different hospitals or manufacturing plants. You can actually monitor from those locations and bring all the monitoring data into one central place together. We do support multi-tenant, which is key for some of the service providers. And now we have the offer in the Azure Marketplace. So what are the real solutions? So from times of why would this help here? The key item is here, and that what most customers decide for this is to have proactive alerting and have also the data available on the real service level. Because you eventually buy a service level agreement or you have a service level agreement with Microsoft, but how can you tell if the services you subscribe to are delivered according to a service level agreement? You can ask who's measuring that. You eventually have the health status on the portal, but that is not necessarily representing the status of your tenant. It is the service as such, but if your tenant is affected or not, you only will know if you proactively test and probe the functionality of your tenant. So this brings it all together and gives you this end-to-end service monitoring capability, which is unique to the solution. Currently, there's no other solution that does what is possible here with the integration into the Azure Monitor. Let's do a few words on Azure Monitor. So this is a very common Microsoft overview slide on Azure Monitor. I put the link down here that you can look up further information if you're interested. So key is there are two kind of stores. There's a metric store and a log store. These data are also in log analytics data stores. And in these stores, like all type of different applications feed into. So they feed, like for example, from the tenant, they have applications and operating systems feeding in there. And you have custom sources that can feed in there, which we use in this case. And on the other side, we use the application insight capabilities to analyze this function, the functionality or the metrics which being brought into, and we provide them into the metric analytics or into the metric browser, and I show this later during the demo. The data basically comes from a collector that probes actively for functionality, brings the data into the metrics and log analytics store, and then is presented in the Azure Monitor. There's a short architecture overview as well. So you use a number of services here like SharePoint, Teams, and others, and OneDrive. And we have like a collector VM. So this is the core of the solution at this point. And just know that VM can run anywhere. It could run on AWS. It could run on Google Compute. So or in your own data center. And on this collector virtual machine, we have the Active 365 monitor, and this is a binary, a program, a .NET. .NET application's been around since many years with the Microsoft, with our NiCE Active 365 management pack. So this is the identical piece that is used in the management pack for System Center Operations Manager. It just does not talk to SCOM at this point, but it talks to a new component, which is called the NiCE Cloud Connector. And this Cloud Connector allows to deliver the data to Azure Monitor or Log Analytics via applications inside. It has other interfaces, so it could also deliver to a file interface. It could deliver to Redis databases. So this is a quite universal part that's been added here. It also takes over the responsibility to schedule the collection workflows that do the probing and the data retrieval via the APIs we use with the Microsoft 365 services. The main integration on this side is typically the Graph API, but we're also using the Azure Management API on that side. On the other side here, this is Application Insights and Azure Monitor, where this data is then stored in your subscription. So once we have understood the architecture within the collector VM, what components we have in here, like the probing component, the collector component on the left side, and here the NiCE Cloud Collector, and that could be, for example, placed in an availability set to make this high available, for example. And then the connection is brought over to the Microsoft 365 services, the data is retrieved and stored in Applications Insights. Obviously, if this setup is chosen, there's a disadvantage of this, because obviously the VM that is running in Azure eventually is very close to the Microsoft 365 services. In fact, they are in most cases in the same data center. So if you have your West Europe tenant, for example, then they would probably run in Amsterdam or in Austria or in Finland in one of those data centers. And the services and the VMs are kind of connected to the same backbone. So you might lose your connectivity for your end user, although everything seems green. So the monitoring says everything is fine, my users can read emails, can send emails, but your users actually say, well, I can't even connect with my Teams client. This is due to the fact that we haven't included the so-called on-prem or client or end user perspective from this. This is something that would happen in a certain step, and there are two options you could do. There's one option which is displayed on here, so you could place the VM, so to say, on those sites, or there's an option as well to use something called a geo proxy on that specific location to actually run the workflows via the on-prem system where the user is. And this brings in your end user experience, because if your users are sitting in this department building, for example, or if they're sitting in the office, then you can actually start the monitoring from right over here and see and take the same internet breakout, the same route the end user does to the services and measure it from this point here. Only then the data which is brought back to Application Insight will accumulate everything and bring everything together in a single data location where it can be used for graphing and monitoring. So this is the distributed deployment which we have on the side. So you might wonder, like, well, we have all this data now, like we have information about file uploads, we have information about how is the user experience, the SharePoint site, how fast this is loading, or how fast is my email delivered. All this information we have, but how could we visualize this information here actually for somebody from the IT department that could see how this comes in there? So at this point, the visualization options are numerous, because in the Azure Monitor, the primary visualization is the Metrics Explorer. The Metrics Explorer is the standard tool that comes in there where you can actually build your queries, and then you can look at the data. You could obviously, if you're a more advanced user, use the KQL, the Kusto query language, to actually extract the data and define the data you'd like to see, which is in the Log Analytics data store, and present it in your custom format, in your custom way as you like. You could also build your workbooks. We include some examples, and I'll show them later, to actually build, like, group together or build together the Kusto query languages, the statements you have done into a view. So that would be kind of your workbook that comes out of that. And then if you want to go one step further and using Power BI with all its capabilities which are in there, you could also use that and use a data source in Power BI to tap into that huge lake of data which is in there from the monitoring data. So to say, the data is in Log Analytics for universal use available, but in the end, it's up to you a bit to present this. We define or we deliver a standard set, but in most cases, this is something on the Azure monitoring side that is still also work in progress from Microsoft, we have to say, because the Azure Monitor is not capable of visualizing data in the same way we eventually saw that in SCOM before, where we could build like fancy dashboards with different kind of widgets on there. But this is something that we to come, or we're looking into options that could do that. But right now the data is there, and there are a couple of ways to visualize that, and I'll show this in a moment. All right, let me go over to the next step and give you a bit of a technical background. So what is actually required here to set this up? So obviously the first thing is you need to have a subscription on Azure, and then you can actually go to the marketplace and start this, and we look at this in a moment. But you also will need an account on the NiCE customer portal. This is typically an evaluation account that you can create just to pull the information from there that is required in addition to what is provided on the Azure Marketplace. The Azure Marketplace is more like a container, and like, for example, the license, the evaluation license, or the latest software package, they're pulled in during the setup process, and we'll look into this in a moment. And yeah, obviously then you can the collector VM is deployed, and there are some details on that, and you will need some admin rights on that VM, which is set up, and yeah, there's also some communication required to the outside world, if you like. All right, so the onboarding step, and I like to actually welcome my colleague Siegfried Rupieta now on the call. So Siegfried, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining. So please take the stage and walk a bit through the different steps that need to be done to set up this offer.
Okay, we will be working through the first two steps here, the deployment of the collector VM and the installation of the software packages then.
Yes, I see your Azure Portal now.
Yeah, it all starts in the Azure Portal, and I was in the home screen here, and I pressed then create a resource. Now we are going to create a resource for the collecting station, the VM actually, which hosts the software then which is needed to provide all this fantastic stuff. So just to search for our marketplace offer, it's sufficient to give NiCE, or you can give NiCE Active 365, whatever. Just a moment then. And it appears, and just make sure that you pick the right one here. If you were part of the preview, you might see the old one here, the old offer here. It will be removed in a few days, but actually it's currently available. But make sure you select the new one here. That's the one without the preview. So we're going here. You saw this in the slide from my colleague here, and we will inspecting the plan. The plan description actually gives you the detailed steps which are needed to start the whole thing here. So you need, as Christian said, a portal account on the NiCE portal. You need to express your request in the NiCE Active 365 monitor for Azure, and so on. We will go through not through all these steps. I have a portal account, but we will create or deploy the VM here and then start the installation of the whole software. So we are going to create a virtual machine here. We are going to use a new resource group. It's my subscription here. I will create a new resource group. And for the instance details, just that my scripts then, the slides will work. I'm picking a region. Let's go to Europe. And then make sure that the image here is pre-selected, but make sure that it's selected this NiCE Active 365 standard 3.20, bring your own license, the generation 1. So this is pre-selected, don't change it. Then you may choose the size of the VM. Actually, we are going for this demo using a 2 CPU system, which is sufficient then to show the installation process. For a real production system, which more tenants, then you would like to choose a larger one with more CPUs, for example, and more RAM. So for username, we'll pick one. I'm choosing a password. Just a moment. Shown here. And actually, that's it. If you have created a virtual machine in the past, you know that there are much more planes here to select the details of the virtual machine. But actually, we don't require any specialities here. So for this demo, I will stick with the default settings. We could go through the disks, but there's nothing which I would change here for this demo. So I just will create it. There are no special requirements then, besides the requirement that your VM is able to connect to our portal. But in the default, it will be. So the validation has passed. I will create it. It takes about 2 or 3 minutes, at least this morning. Took 2 or 3 minutes. And eventually then our VM will be deployed.
Okay, so great so far. Let me ask some stupid question here, Siegfried. So you said the VM you selected is 2 CPUs. So What is all running in this VM that it just needs a little bit of CPU, or when would you actually pick a larger system here?
I would pick a larger system if I would have to monitor multiple tenants, say 4 or 5 tenants, then I would go to a 4 CPU system. For just one tenant or 2 tenants, I think 2 CPU system with 4 gig memory should be sufficient, and for the demo as well. But if you go to higher number of tenants, then I would throw in some CPUs.
Mm-hmm. And does the collector and the NiCE Cloud Connect need a lot of memory, or how does it behave? Like, I think we selected 4. Was it 4 gigabyte of memory?
4 gig, yeah, that was the special thing, the standard size here for this 2 CPU system. No, actually, it's not that much size of memory that's needed. Actually, are the CPUs. Because our NiCE Cloud Connector is started regularly at a 5-minute interval, and then it kicks off the collections, the actual collectors, which make the connections to Azure and retrieve the data. So this is going all in parallel. So for most of the time, the system will sit and idle around, and then every 5 minutes, there will be some load generated, mostly on behalf of because of the collectors which are started then and which will collect the data from Azure. So this is why the CPUs are coming in.
Yes, I understand. So like the default collecting interval, from what I understand, is like 5 minutes. Okay.
Right.
So if I like to move this up to 1 minute, for example, would that also mean I would need to have more CPU then?
No, I don't think so, because the evaluation or the fetching cycle is relatively quick. So if a minute is there, then I think the 4 CPU system for multiple tenants would do it along. But it doesn't hurt to monitor or to check the load of the system of the VM, and then to adjust if it turns out that it's the load is too high or something like that.
All right. Okay, perfect. Thanks. So there's a question while this deployment is in progress. So thanks. There was a question posted here in our question window. So I just read the question. Hello, would it be possible to highlight the advantages of using the active monitor for Azure versus using a monitoring solution combined Azure Management Pack and O365 Management Pack from SCOM? So let's put this a bit in context, because the question talks about the Azure Management Pack. So the Azure Management Pack is primarily there. It's a Microsoft provided management pack, which is primarily there to monitor resources. This is something which we don't do with the solution. So, and the O365 management pack for SCOM, I would assume that you are referring to the Microsoft O365 management pack. And yes, there's a difference. So if you compare it in this case, because the O365 active monitoring solution we're showing here has this active component, which the Microsoft O365 management pack does not have. So we actually go and check this, while if you're using the Microsoft provided solution, it will basically just retrieve the information, the health status information from the Office portal, and will rather give you a service information, like if the service being degraded or not. So however, if you're using the NiCE Active 365 management pack, then both solutions are kind of comparable from a functionality perspective. They're actually identical. The only difference is there where you store your data, either in SCOM or in Active 365 or in Azure, so to say. So so it's up to you. You could use both in parallel. It really depends where you want to see your monitoring data. That was a bit extensive answer. I hope that was fine. So otherwise, please follow up and give some more details. I think, Siegfried, the deployment has finished. Am I correct?
Yes, the deployment is complete. So we can proceed here. We go to the resource here. and see the details of our VM. In a production environment, you will typically go and configure some more attributes and settings here, for example, firewalls in the network security group. But for this one, we just trust that our password is strong enough, but we configure a DNS name. Take this one here, waiting a little bit, saving it. So we have a public DNS name now, and I can reach then the VM from with remote desktop. So this is done now. The VM is running, up and running, and I can switch to the next thing here. You will see my remote desktop in a minute. So I'm starting here. I've prepared the entry here, a 364 demo. That's why I configured the DNS name, because I added a DNS name here in this configuration. So now I'm connecting to our new system. I already configured the password and the user, so it didn't ask me.
It's a new system, I see.
That's the new system,
logging in
yes.
for the first time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Takes a while.
Well, it's the first time we log in. So, and what we expect to happen now? Because
we're expecting to open the server manager, and I want to get rid of them. the window.
Wonderful.
And then I'm opening command window. So the installation guide, the quick installation guide, and what you have seen in the plan description is you now open Windows command shell. For example, a PowerShell or a command window will do it as well. Server manager is not coming up. And next one, we go to program files, NiCE installer. And here it is. Server manager is coming up.
You were too fast for the server manager.
Yeah, I'm too fast. Okay. So here is the preloaded NiCE bootloader. That's actually the only piece of software which is baked into this image. So it's a standard image, and the NiCE bootloader is pre-configured here. And now we are going to start a NiCE bootloader and fetch the packages which make up the NiCE Active 365 monitor for Azure from the NiCE portal. So the NiCE bootloader, and you have to give the short name for the product which you are going to fetch or download. And this is the Active 365 1A, this one. So the bootloader connects to our portal and asks for your username. That's actually your portal account. Your portal account, which has been granted access to the download area of Active 365 Monitor for Azure. I have such an account, and I will now log in by copy and paste. So I'm using this one, and then I'm using my password, which you will not see. Even if I would have typed it in, then you would have seen it. Moment, please. Okay, now it's connecting to the portal. And I gave the wrong password, I think.
It's a good test, so you need to have the right password in this case.
Shouldn't have happened here. Okay, next one. Sorry for that. Yep, downloading the installer. So it now fetches the installer. The next step executes the installer. Installer goes to the NiCE portal, fetches a control file, and everything which is in there is these are the packages of the software, the NiCE Active 365 Monitor for Azure. Then the installation command is run. see it here. It's actually a script, a PowerShell script then, and it will install all and everything which is needed to make this a collecting station. So it installs the .NET version which we need. It installs the NiCE Cloud connector. It installs the actual collector. You're now seeing here expanding archives, installing. Takes 2 minutes or so.
So one question, Sigrid. What about the license? Like, do I need a license for this? How is this done?
You need a license, but actually we have packaged an evaluation license into this download. See here, this M365 large plus evil lick. So this is an evaluation license, which is good until the end of the year.
All right, so once I have this portal account and start this, the license basically comes with it.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
And it may be easily exchanged later for production licenses. So it's actually changing a file then. So now we are done. Execution of command has succeeded and the whole thing is installed. We will not go into the configuration of the NCC and of the active of the collector, because that's described in separate documents here, but we will take a look whether everything is installed right now. So let's open a file explorer. I'm too quick. Going here into the C directory, C drive. We have installations in program files. .NET is installed now. We have the NiCE folder. Our NiCE Cloud connector is installed here. Here we'll find the quick start guide for the NiCE Cloud connector, but it will actually be in your download area on the portal as well. And this is everything. That's the installer from where we started the whole thing. The collector, the actual collector is installed here. So it's installed, seems so installed. And actually our service should be pre-configured or registered as well. So here with the services, let's have a look. It's not started yet because it needs to be configured, and it would throw some errors then into the event log. But just let's have a look whether it's there. And it should there, yeah, here it is. NiCE Active 365 for Azure, that's our service. So this is pre-registered, and once you have configured the whole software here according to the manuals, then you can start it. There's nothing else which needs to be done. So a word about the installer here. If you gave a wrong password, an account, you saw this earlier here in the demo, you will get some error messages. If you cannot connect to the portal, you will get some error messages. If there are some errors which cannot be fixed right now, by you reading these messages, there are some logs here which are written during the installation. And you may then open a support column providing all these logs. This will shorten the time and the delay we need then to analyze what's going on in your system and give you a hint or solution then much quicker. So then simply provide all the logs here and we will be able to see what was the problem. Yeah, that's basically it's all, Christian. So we have installed. The next thing would be then the configuration and firing up the service.
Perfect. So, and I'll pick up in a moment from there and show you once this is configured and the service runs, how the data actually will look that's being collected. So, but before doing that, there's an interesting question, Siegfried. You might probably be very well able to answer. What data, if any, is visible to NiCE from our Azure tenant? So the question is like, if you configure the solution, does NiCE see any details or data from the customer's tenant?
No, because we don't get your subscription, we don't get your Azure credentials or anything. You just use your subscription to create and deploy a VM in Azure. using your subscription, and then you are just installing the software, and you just give your credentials in the NiCE portal, which the bootloader uses to make the connection, to authenticate and authorize with our portal, and then to download all the things to your VM. There's no connection, no storing of any data which you gave in Azure in our portal. Simply the same thing as you would log into our portal and press on the download button there and download stuff, files, manuals from our portal. It's actually the same thing. So we see nothing from your subscription, from your Azure data.
Yeah, I think exactly that's the correct answer. So we do not collect and send or see data in this case. The best example is that you could also deploy this. Well, this is a deployable VM, right? So you could also deploy this theoretically on your on-premise system or on AWS or another place. So that actually shows that we do not have the data. The key data which later is entered, like usernames and password for your Microsoft 365 ecosystem, they should stay on there, and you could they will not leave that system. So which you could also prove by looking at the traffic. I think to be very strict and honest, Siegfried, we have to admit that the VM that logs into in our portal, we see the IP address from that VM, do we?
Yes, that's right. I have to admit.
Yeah, so okay, but that
That's
has
correct.
nothing to do with your subscription or your tenant, so to say.
No.
Okay.
Okay, but we got another question here. Can an existing VM be used rather than creating a new VM? In theory, yes, but not with the current offer, because you would need the NiCE bootloader. And the NiCE bootloader is part of this image, but might be made available later as a download in our portal. And once you have the bootloader, then you can use exactly the same commands then to fetch the data to your VM from our portal.
Great. So thanks for the questions. So we'll have a later questions and answer section a bit later. So let's go back to the slides here. So and go a bit on, and I actually wanted to go over to the demo system. So just let's go over here. I need to log in again. So I'm showing my Azure portal now. And on the Azure side, we had to actually set up a resource where we log the data in. And this is our application inside the resource. And here we actually have a monitoring section, and here we have metrics. So here in the metrics, so this is the key. That's where we want to look, and that's where the data comes in now. And these are custom metrics, dimensions, how they're called. And we could, for example, look at the Microsoft Exchange Online now, and we would be interested in our Exchange server response time, and we can see this data here. Now, in this case, we have this data for multiple tenants, so we would apply a splitting on a per tenant base. So here we see the Exchange server response time for users on a different tenant. So for example, here we have one tenant, our Lab 41 tenant, which has a 2.3K millisecond response time at this point. We could also, let's say, be interested in like mail flow or anything else where we have a metric for. So we have the mailbox logon, for example, from an end user perspective, really like how long does it take for the end user to log on there? Or like, how long does it take to send emails? So like typically emails are within a few minutes delivered. So, and sometimes there are exceptions. This actually gives the details on the delivery latency. Or the log-on duration. How long does it take to log on in milliseconds? So to log on to a mailbox, it takes between 400 to 600 milliseconds. Sometimes there are exceptions, but obviously, if they're out of boundaries here, you could set up an alert and send you an alert based on that. So there are obviously other namespaces like for all the different services. Let's say, for example, the tenant. So we'd like interested in the service health status here of this, or we interested in the the active users currently on those tenants. So we have like one tenant with 12 users, another with a few, but we could also monitor that over time in the number of users that on there. We have Teams, we have SharePoint, and we have really a large number of metrics that are logged into that, like including here, for example, IaaS request latency, a customer sees or an end user sees when they open their SharePoint. I will not take now the time to go through all the metrics that are on there. So this is would go beyond this. So obviously you can go and change the time scale here to say, let's have a 6 hour over the last 40 hours. We get like a kind of a different graph. So you could also then use the functionality to drill into this and see the exact response time in each point in time here for, in this case, for SharePoint. So this is one way where you can access all the different metrics that are collected. You can apply filters to that. You can create here new alert rule on the top. So let's say you'd like to alert if there's a problem on something. Alerting is a bit well, still needs to bit of work in our perspective for Azure Monitor. You will need to create an alert, which is an extra task where you need to define your thresholds, what you like to do with these alerts, and if what you want to do with this alert. If you want to use a webhook or send this via email, or how this should be dealt with the threshold violations. For visualization, we also provide workbooks. So workbooks are responsible to group together KQL like queries or statements you have defined. So let's, for example, look for SharePoint Online here. We have a workbook here, and this allows us to have like a one view on different types of performance counter. So we have tenant and geo proxy data in here, and that would be for the download per SharePoint here, for example. And we have another one for download here, or we have another workbook we can go into for the Exchange area. So here we actually have a good overview of the different tenants, including here we also see the geo proxies for the different regions. So we see, for example, Tokyo and Ohio. So we actually can filter and get some details on the different locations where end users are working from. So we can get this data as well in here, drill into the data again to get these details here. I didn't show in the Metric Explorer the splitting, so to say, by different geo proxies. Maybe let's do that quickly to get an overview here as well. So let's go again to Exchange Online, pick the Exchange Server response time, do the apply splitting, do that while proxy. So now here we see as well the proxies down here, and for Virginia, Ohio, and Tokyo, Ireland, and Sydney. So we can actually see where it takes the longest or the highest latency for the Exchange web server can be seen. There are more workbooks. I'm not going to go into details. We got only a very few minutes left before we come to the end of our session today. So thanks, like about everybody stayed on for the whole hour. So let me open the slide for last few updates. So again, you have data visualization in Power BI. So the data can be taken to your Power BI, and you add a data source for that. There we have also instructions for that available if needed, and there could be different sets created. Like you could also graph actually where your mailboxes are located in which data centers, and a number of other things. With that, I think we can go over to the Q&A section. So let's see if we have some other questions in here. So there's one question: in a hybrid scenario using Exchange on-prem and Exchange online, does the Active 365 monitor for Azure provide the ability to measure performance for external email round trip? Yes, thanks, very good question. So the question is really like for those customers that's running in a hybrid mode, where they do not just have Exchange online, but also Exchange on-premise. For those environments, we actually need to have access to the Exchange server. So the solution as of now, from the offering that is on Azure from the marketplace, it does not tie into your Active Directory typically. So you would then, in this case, go the route that was in the question earlier, where you have then a pre-built package, and you would deploy this package in your data center in the same forest or domain where you have your Exchange server, because we do run some PowerShell and commands on the actual Exchange server. And with that, we can then measure round trips between actually the Exchange server on premise and Exchange online. And not only that, we can actually do also free busy checks between the two Exchange environments. So the actual collector supports that. It just needs to be a different type of setup. And the second part of the question was like to have external round trips, like external in terms of like see if your organization can send to Gmail or to the Google domain or some other external domains and receive that. We call this also mail reflector or to measure that round trip. This is currently not part of the product, so this is something we have on a roadmap, although this was not on this type of roadmap because it's more on the collector part. Currently, it supports your organization internally, either hybrid or cloud only, just to go to complete different service in terms of a mail reflector, and it's currently not part of the product. So there's been one question about pricing on here as well. So the pricing, we typically don't put this on the webinar, so because it's depends a bit on the number of services you want to monitor. Like some customers do not use Teams, while others do not use Exchange. It depends what type of services you have. Plus, it depends on the size or the number of Microsoft 365 licenses you have activated. So, and if you have E5 licenses, if you have 10,000 or 1,000 or 100 E5 licenses, we have different tiers where they fall in. Please send us a message, and we're happy to send you that information over. So, we'll can explain the pricing model. In most cases, we have both models. It's a subscription type of model and perpetual license model, but for the Active 365 monitor, it's a typical subscription model where you have a similar to the E5 or free license, a fee like per subscription period. All right, I think with that we got all questions. Siegfried, did you see any other questions? All good?
No, not at the moment.
Okay, very good. So with that, we're 4 minutes early, perfect. So thank you all for taking your time today out of your schedule and joining us today. Wish you all a great rest of the day and hope to speak to you soon. Thank you all. I close the recording now. Thank you and goodbye.